Reginald here. As you may know, I've been kind of poking around for a good marksman's focus build that feels good. And a lot of people have reached out to me and said like, oh, you should use like the Columnus auto gun or any of the high rate of fire weapons to try and make the build feel good. And it's not that I didn't know that or don't believe that. In fact, I have a pretty good handle on the meta. My complaint about that kind of thing is it's not really accurate to the aesthetic of something called marksman's focus to be using really spammy guns. And so I've been kind of hunting around to find something that, I don't know, like had the feeling of a marksman's weapon instead of a spammy gun build. In any case, I eventually have to concede that there isn't any good builds that I have been able to find in the time that I've allotted to the subject that match that criteria. So as a consequence, I've picked up a build that is centered on the Mark IV las gun. It's a derivation of a build that Wildspice published a little bit ago, and I am aware there was some controversy around that, but that's not really my thing too much. I don't care about that kind of drama. I just wanted a build that satisfied me from the perspective of someone who wanted to be entertained. So I took that build, tried it out, found it did perfectly fine, iterated on a bit, and I have something that I think is decent to actually play that I'm just going to pop on the screen for you in just a second so you can see what I'm up to.
We interrupt this programming to bring you a special message.
This is Bomb King, and he is the best character in any hero shooter, and I mean that. Now this game in particular is called Paladins, and I used to play it an awful lot, especially when I was poor, because it's free. And yeah, it's very similar to Overwatch, but it has some advantages over Overwatch beyond just being free. It's actually a really good game. But I'm really not here to talk to you about Paladins. We're here to talk about the king himself, the Bomb King.
You are not welcome here!
Give your king a big time. Okay. Killing spree.
Most characters in most games take themselves at least somewhat seriously. And I consider that to be a good thing overall. Like, I kind of want my settings to be serious because it's easier to go from serious and then take that and break that down into funny jokes and memes and whatever. Like, that track makes sense. That's easy, right? But it's hard to go from like a meme character to something serious, right? You can't really like build that up into something serious. But occasionally something that is just a joke from the get-go is just so charming, it's really worth rolling with, and Bomb King is that. He is a giant walking living bomb, I think he's technically like a bomb golem, right? From like the D&D franchise. Like, you've got your flesh golems and your clay golems, but he's a bomb golem. And he throws living bombs, and he has a grumpy bomb and a poppy bomb and his subject bombs, and he's just like running around having the time of his life. And it's really great how well the voice actor nailed the delivery on a lot of these lines.
I have such an explosive personality. That feels so good. I lead with an iron fist. Wait, is it iron? Boom! Boom! Boom!
And it's just so funny to me, like the voice line where he dies and he's like, ah, I died. That just kills me every time, even to this day.
I died!
And I think they found it funny enough that they started putting it on other characters as well, but it really started on Bomb King, at least to my knowledge. So I guess here's a brief list of the things that I find enjoyable about Bomb King as a character, and I'll end on what I think is the most important one. He is basically a cartoon character with all the charm and amusement that entails. He literally holds smiley face bombs in front of your camera the entire game, which is, I don't know, I just find that amusing to have these like happy bombs smiling at you the whole time you're playing. He's amusing to listen to, and his voice actor is excellent, but most importantly, he is actually a surprisingly mechanically deep character with a ton of player expression on the table and a super high skill ceiling. He's even considered to be S tier right now in the current balance. Last I checked, I went and checked a couple of YouTubers out to see what they were saying about him in the balance right now, and that seems to be the meta. So that's good news if you're into this kind of thing. But what do I mean by having a lot of mechanical depth? Well, he's from the earlier cast of Paladins heroes where there was a lot of projectiles on the DPS heroes and less hit scan. And as a consequence, he has a high skill ceiling because you need to manage all these projectiles. He has 3 projectiles to use if we don't account for throwing himself, which is more of a rolling mechanic. He has a Grumpy Bomb, which is a heavy, slow projectile that has its own detonation timer. And then he has the Poppy Bomb and the Standard Bombs, both of which can actually be air detonated at will and will otherwise stick to a target or a surface to then be later detonated at will. but the Poppy Bomb and the standard bombs have different arcs of fire as well on their own, and then they have different effects. So the generic bombs do damage in an AoE as well as on target. They do the most. The Poppy Bomb does low AoE damage but has a high knockback. You can take a card that makes the Poppy Bomb detonate on impact, but you can still air detonate it, which can be very useful if you're good at sort of measuring the radius of the explosion relative to the positioning of the enemies. The same is true for the regular bombs. So let's say you are fighting a flying enemy of some kind and you're having trouble hitting your opponent. If you can sort of time things well, you can actually learn to air detonate near your opponent and still deal consistent damage with those air detonations, because you can essentially create sort of a flak scenario and help blow him out of the sky. So that already is a lot to manage and mitigate, which creates a lot of interest and a lot of different techniques. But on top of that, you can leave 6 bombs around the environment before they start to despawn as you throw new ones. And this actually means that you have the ability to leave traps around the environment. Now, anytime you detonate all the remaining bombs in the environment. And detonation is just you right click. But this means you can lay traps if you're paying attention. You can throw bombs around and you can force an enemy to maneuver back into your bombs and then detonate those bombs to deal damage in a radius around the ground where those bombs are. You can stack them up around surfaces. There's a lot of utility here that really is limited to your creativity. So all of this gives you a ton of interesting options. There is a key detail I almost forgot to mention, but the sound effect from hitting your targets is a real monkey neuron activator. I mean, listen to this. Yeah, that just gets me going. All right, well, I'm not sure what else to say. I really wanted to just sort of highlight these key things and invite you to just check it out. Like, it's a free-to-play game. If you're bored one night and you don't feel like playing some Darktide and you're looking for something to do, like, go check it out. Go pick up Bomb King and just go have some fun and some quick play for a little bit and just go see what I'm talking about. It'll probably take you a few games to get used to it because he's not an easy character to play. And you know, ultimately, I don't really play this game that much anymore, but here is the build I use, and I used to use when I played a lot. It worked decently in my quick play games after I remembered how not to die as the fattest DPS ever, but I'm trying to keep this short since this was intended to be a short video. But man, really, like, what an awesome character, and I'm just really wanted to say so somewhere.
We now return to our originally scheduled programming.
And it's worth mentioning for those of you who don't know me or haven't watched a lot of my videos that meta builds aren't really my thing. Like, I know what the meta builds are and I have played them, but they bore me fairly quickly because they are so easy. So I tend to drift towards things that are just weird or have a funny gimmick or do something different, right? So this build puts up good numbers, but this build isn't like incredible. There's a number of technical weaknesses that the build has that make it vulnerable to certain situations. And so you're going to have to rely on your team a little bit more if you're running this build. It's not really like my solo build that does whatever I want kind of thing. That being said, it is a pretty strong build in terms of its capacity to put out damage. So I'll post up one of my scoreboards real quick just so you can see what I'm talking about in terms of numbers here. You know, the overall damage here is pretty solid. It also lets you operate in a way that I think is pretty entertaining. If you have like a friend who's just like here from like Left 4 Dead or something like that and wants to play the game where they just shoot the gun as much as possible and does as little melee as possible because they don't really understand it yet, this build works for that. The gunplay is actually pretty solid for any use case. I kind of don't pull out my melee very much and just shoot as much as I can or want to, and that's been working very well for me in most of my games. Now, obviously, if I start to get overrun, I need to use pushes, push attacks, block pushes, etc. All that's fine, but the point is, if you have a friend who is a little bit newer to the sort of Vermintide genre and is trying to learn some of the other mechanics, and you want to give them a gun they can shoot into hordes without wasting all of the ammo in the entire game, this will let them do that. You really only need a few ammo pickups in a given game to be able to shoot into everything you see the entire game long, and so, yeah, that's fun. And this is really the point of the video that I'm going to sort of end on. See, originally I was just gonna kind of do a bait and switch, a little bit of trolling, you know, get you interested and then twist the video in a different direction, talk about Bomb King for like 5 minutes for, you know, a quick video, and then work on some of the other projects that I've got up in the air. And now I'm just out here doing like shot-for-shot recreations of scenes from Signalis, so like I gotta stop at some point because I'm losing it. The thing is, as I was sort of doing this MG4 build, which I do enjoy, I was thinking about sort of some of the criticisms that Wild Spice's original build got. And one of the ones that stood out to me the most was the perfectly valid and honestly generally correct criticism that you shouldn't really shoot into hordes. And like, that's super true. As a good rule of thumb, it is unwise to blast into hordes, generally speaking. There are good reasons to shoot into hordes. I know there are hardliners who will say never shoot into hordes, but like, there are good reasons to shoot into hordes. I'll list like 3. You've got a weapon that clears hordes very quickly compared to your melee weapon, so there's a time advantage to doing it. You need to clear out a large number of enemies quickly because there's a negative situation that's gone down, like one of your teammates has downed and you need to make space. There's a lot of specialists on the field and you're trying to get to the specialists, so you just blast through the horde so you can do so quickly. Those are all good enough reasons to shoot into a horde, but here's a thought. If you have a weapon that's as ammo efficient as the MG4 lasgun is in this build, and it is a left tree build, which is to say it has no melee talents at all. It's actually pretty garbage in melee, where you can pretty commonly shoot into hordes pretty extendedly. I mean, not literally all the time. You're going to have to use your melee some of the time with this build, otherwise you're going to run out of ammo. But like, if you're being reasonable about it, you could shoot into a fair number of the hordes. Then how good does it perform? Like, is it worth doing compared to meleeing with some weapons? It probably is, I bet. How much better is it? How much worse is it? So I figured I would put question to the test system that I have built and find out. Thanks to the contributions of the renowned Combine, I actually know for a fact that 100 enemies is a standard damnation horde spawn. And what I've chosen to do for the testing apparatus that I use is do 50 poxwalkers, 50 groaners. It's a good baseline. I use that test on a Mark 6 power sword, a chain axe of my preference, and the lasgun, the MG4 lasgun, to get times on kills. And I'm pleased to show you those results in comparison to a fabulously designed leaderboard. One of the members of the Redemptionists has been hard at work building the data set that we've been collecting into a really well-structured leaderboard, and it is fantastic. So many thanks for that. It looks great, and it's a lot easier to read. So I'll be introducing that for the first time here. I'm only going to be showing off the horde enemies. We'll be talking about the other enemies in the future in another video. I'd like to go through all my data stuff in the next video, actually, because I assume there'll be a patch soon. So I've left that on screen for you to look at. And what are the conclusions? Well, 4 seconds is about the margin of error, and 10 seconds is definitely a big gap. And it turns out that the MG4 lasgun has a pretty solid time to kill on a horde of about 35 seconds. Now, obviously, you are going to be having to dodge around. You don't have any pushes. You have bad control. I mean, when I did my test, and it should be on screen right about now, it drove me all the way back to the start of the map in order to kill all of the enemies. So like, it's not great for control. But if you have someone else, an Ogren, a Zealot, in there controlling the enemy group, shooting into them is perfectly viable. It's probably faster than some of the weapons that you might bring with you because of the really slow time to kill without any melee talents that Veteran actually has on melee. He's just got slow hands, man. The power sword is obviously going to be one of the faster ones. I was able to test the 6. I wasn't able to test the 3. But look, 25 seconds, solid time to kill for a horde group with the Mark 6 power sword. Very easy to use in that sense with those light attacks. It's strong. But 35 seconds to just shoot them all, that is not bad at all. It's really quite fine. It's in the sort of general yellow range for time to kill across all builds. I mean, we're talking about builds on Zealot that has 5 stacks of Martyrdom and are using Fury of the Faithful to speed up the attack speed even further. So my ruling on this is, if you're going to run this build, blast away into the hordes. Don't steal all the ammo. Make sure to keep an eye on your ammo supply. Make sure to let other people have ammo. But like, you're going to have plenty because it's got a ton of ammo regen and it's a really ammo efficient weapon. So just like, have fun. Shoot all the poxwalkers you want. The actual waste of ammo that I have found personally is, if you can't hit clean headshots, and even sometimes if you can, dreg bruisers especially waste a lot of ammo for me. And scab bruisers, if you hit body shots instead of headshots, also waste a lot of ammo for me. So I would consider maybe meleeing those more than you shoot them, but still, you've got a lot of spare ammo with this build, so I don't know, have fun. Just be responsible with your ammo usage, right? Don't run out of ammo because you weren't paying attention. If you start running low, go melee a few specialists. Stand near your friends so that they can kill specialists for you. You'll be fine. In fact, let me invoke a new rule of thumb for you with this kind of build. If you're running a lasgun build, especially the MG4, and you're blasting away into hordes, if you have 30% or more ammo, have fun. If you're getting into the 30% range and less, then it's time to get dirty and melee as much as you can into hordes and whatever else. This is doubly true if you are not using a power sword, because you're probably going to be able to kill hordes faster in many cases, depending on your choice of melee weapon, with your gun than your melee weapon. And your melee weapon is going to be there to help you against elites and armored elites that you can't kill with your lasgun. And that is the reason also that I took regenning crack grenades in this build as opposed to other options. With that, I will say thank you all so much for visiting. I really appreciate you hanging out with me and kind of tolerating my entertainment. I know that this video went a little off the rails, and that was fun for me, but probably confusing for you, so I appreciate you tagging along. Hopefully you gained something of value, especially towards the end, as I dialed in towards the subject that was directly related to Darktide that was interesting. And if you found the Bomb King section fun, please let me know. I read all my comments and I respond to all of them as well. And with that, I suppose I will wish you all a happy February. Bye-bye.
Boom! Boom!